Hey everyone. Oops, I think I better. No, I think my volume's up. Let me know if you can't hear me. How's everybody doing? I'll give everybody a minute to jump in. I've got some fun things to show you today and answer your questions also. And I the last time I forgot to hit the record button right at the beginning of the broadcast. So, as usual, I made myself a sign so that I wouldn't forget it this time. So that's good. Hope everybody's doing well. And today I wanted to take some time to talk about just a couple of little things I wanted to show you, but also I wanted to answer your questions. Hey, from South Dakota, Isla. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can't hear me all right. I think you should be able to hear me. It should be okay. Good. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to jump in. Um, yeah, I've been working on a few different things. Hi, Teresa from California. Yay. Good to see you. And I actually think I did remember everything. Santa Rosa, Celeste, hi, how are you? Good to see you here too. Gonna give everybody a few minutes so that they can kind of get themselves squared away. Virginia Beach. Oh, good. Oh, from Scotland. Hi, Leslie. My husband and I were just talking about going to Scotland a few days ago, or a couple of weeks ago, actually. So that's on our definitely must visit list. Florida. Hi, Judy. Good. Well, I hope you all have some questions, or, if you have suggestions about ways to do something a little bit differently than I've ever shown or better, I am always, always up for getting great suggestions and changing things up a little bit and making things as easy with the best results as possible. Hi, Kentucky. Susan. Carol, you said loud and clear. Great. Leslie, you said it's beautiful in Scotland. Yes, I know. I was a big fan of Outlander, so they had some great scenery in there. A couple of my friends were in Scotland, I think just late last year, and they loved it. My friend's husband has Scottish roots, so they went over to explore that. So, hi from Arizona. Hi, Sharon. Joyce from Wisconsin. From Yay! Oh, good. We're getting people from all over. Great, fantastic. Thanks for tuning in. This is great. Give everybody a few more minutes. What the heck? Hope everybody is doing well. My sister-in-law has been visiting. My husband just took her out to lunch. It's his sister, so she's flying home to Florida tomorrow. So they're having a farewell luncheon together, and so that should be fun. It's been great having her, and she loves to cook. So I have not turned on the stove since she arrived, which has been delightful. I don't mind cooking, but if somebody else wants to do it, I'm all for that. So anyway, yeah, so we've been having a good time and doing a few different things, and she's on her way home. Had some fun. Oh, Missoula, Montana. Hi, Helen. Judy said you're looking for tips on serging lightweight fabric. Um, Judy, if you have, take your time, no rush certainly, but if you have some specific questions about serging on light fabric, I'll be happy to help you with that too. Like is there a particular technique that you're having a problem with? I know sometimes people have problems with rolled hems on lightweight fabrics, things like chiffons and organzas and things like that. So I'll be happy to help you with that and answer some questions. So This is going to be mainly a Q&A Serger Savvy. So, okay, well, that's about 5 minutes. So people will probably still be coming in. But welcome, everybody. This is June Serger Savvy, and I'm here to answer your burning questions about your Serger. And I can give you tips on almost any brand. I may not have specific settings and things, but I can certainly give you guidance. And if you need more help, I can do a little bit of research afterwards and always email you. Pamela Barry says she has a thread fusion question. She's used two 12-weight in the looper for the cover chain. Could I use two 8-weight? Whoops, wait a minute. I'm seeing. I would say, okay, so for thread fusion, you all know what that is. That's my. This is the large. The universal size is the smaller round size. They'll both fit almost any serger, but the small one, if you have maybe a slightly older serger, that one, the small size, the universal, will probably be a better fit on the table. A lot of the older sergers don't have as wide a thread stand table on them, so you may need to go to the smaller size, but the large size will fit almost every single one, and I am getting a new shipment of these in tomorrow. But going back to your question, that's a great question. Could I use two 8-weights or three 12-weights? I have done both. Now, this is, again, for thread fusion, and that's using them in the same looper. Now, I will say, when I use two 8-weights together, that's a very heavy, that's 50% heavier than the 12-weight. I always use the little bypass brackets. I put my thread cradle through the air threading tubes, and then I open those up. I put the threads themselves through the bypass brackets inside the machine. And then I pick up that thread cradle on the inside and pull them through that way. I find that if you try to get the two 8-weights through the air threading tubes with a thread cradle, which you absolutely need, that's way too much thickness for them to go through with just the air threading. But if you use the bypass brackets, I find that reduces the drag that you get from, and all it is a matter of how the mass of the threads in the air threading tubes, if they go all the way through that direction. I've done it, it works, but I find that the stitching is better with two 8-weight threads in the bypass brackets, and I would do the exact same thing with three 12-weight threads, also using those bypass brackets. And let me just, let me see, I'll open up my machine a little bit just in case. And if you've got a baby, this is the L890, this is the Bernina. And if you've got a Baby Lock, and probably other brands as well, if you look inside your machine, you also probably have some of these bypass brackets, which cuts down the drag. Let me just see. What's the best way to sew knits to keep it from stretching? That's from Marlene and Marthan. I have an ovation. I would like to sew a lace skirt. Thread city. Okay. All right. So let me just open this up. And I know definitely on the Ovation and Triumph, you have these bypass brackets. Let me just see. I'm going to have to move. Let me go back to me so that you don't get dizzy here. I'm going to move the camera over so that it'll be on those bypass brackets. Hang on a second. I'm tilting this so that I don't want you to get dizzy looking at it. So let me just see if this works. Okay, so here are the bypass brackets right here. This is the knob that locks my upper looper down when I'm in cover chain stitch mode. Let me see if I can get a slightly better angle pulling this over. I'm just being very careful with the cameras. Okay, so here are the bypass brackets that I'm talking about right here. And you see the little colored triangles. The blue is for the back hole on the bracket for the upper looper, which I don't think I've ever used multiple threads in the upper looper that have had to go through the bypass brackets. The red is the middle hole, and the front one, the lavender one, is for the cover or chain looper, I should say. Now, when I go down and I bring those threads down, I come down through the top of the machine as usual, and then I bypass, and that's why I call them bypass brackets. I just tilted that. I bring my thread cradle through the here, and then, but I bring my 8 weight or 3 12 weights right over here into that hole, and then I pick up my thread cradle down here, and let me see if I can turn on my light so that you can see this inside the machine a little bit better. That doesn't do much, but let me get my flashlight. Hang on a second. I'm using my phone to light this up a little bit. I don't want you to have to look at my phone. Okay, so here are my threading tubes down here. Hold on a second, and I think I have thread here for a thread cradle, and I'll show you exactly how I do this. Just a minute. Okay, I am going to lock my threading tubes. I'm going to put my thread cradle through the air threading tubes, just like you normally would with other threads too. My 2 cut ends are going through here. Oh, I'm on that screen. Okay, so hang on. Okay, now watch down here. Let me get my light here. When I open this up, you can just see the little turquoise thread down here. And it's also through the eye of the looper. But with the bypass brackets, I would want to pick up the loop here. And let me grab a thread just to pretend. I don't have the multiple threads, but hang on a second. I'm going to just switch things around on my machine. Hold on a second. Just to show you, this is a navy, a dark thread, unfortunately, that I had on the machine for something else. I'm going to put this through my threading path for the chain looper. Now, I am going to move this over so you can see it. All right, so I'm going to go through my bypass bracket right here. Now, we're going to pretend that these are multiple threads. I am pulling that through here. I'm going to give myself enough length here. Now, what I do is I can up here pull this thread chain or thread cradle right down here, but I take that locking fork, and I find that makes it really easy to grab it, just like this. It's still in the eye of the upper looper, but here's my lasso that I'm going to put my thread through right here. Here's the loop. We'll pretend that these are 2 8-weight threads or 3 12 weights. I'm going to put that through here. Just give it a few inches. Now I'm still going to pull it through the upper looper or the chain looper eye. Let me move this down. That's what you're seeing right up here. It is going to pick up that thread and pull it through. And then I'd be ready to go. And if those were multiple threads, I would be all set. But you can see, let me tilt this a little bit. This is through the bypass bracket. The threading on the top of the machine is exactly the same, okay? So I hope that answers your question. But if it doesn't, Pamela, just shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll be happy to give you some more guidance on that. So, but for the maximum, I would say 2 8-weight threads would definitely be max, or 3 12-weights. I wouldn't try to go more than that. I have done 4. Let me go back to me. And oh, by the way, if I look kind of blurry, it's because I'm not using my Logitech face camera. For some reason, that is giving me issues with YouTube Live. I have no idea why, but as long as the shots on the machine are good, that's all I really care. If I'm a little blurry, I'll live with it. But anyway, so what was I going to say? Yeah, so that's that. But definitely, I've used 4 embroidery weight threads, like machine embroidery weight threads that are much lighter than the 12 weights. I've used those in my loopers. I have also used those, and I think I demoed that one time with a reverse flat lock. I have used 4 machine embroidery weight threads in a top stitch needle. Fabulous. It's so beautiful. And those have that little bit of sheen to them. And the 4 threads together makes the ladders bold enough that they're really, really pretty. So that's another fun thing to do. And that is in a top stitch needle. And believe it or not, you can take all 4 threads and thread them all together through the eye of that, because the top stitch needle eye is larger. Okay. Arlene is saying, what's the best way to sew knits to keep from stretching? Okay. When I do my Serger Essentials class, I always talk about differential feed, and that is important. When you're doing knits, no matter what they are, knits can be all over the map as far as how stable they are or how unstable they are. I find that things like rayon knits that are lightweight, they're very soft and drapey, they're beautiful, but boy, oh boy, they are not the least bit stable. You have to be really careful with them. And the first thing I always do when I'm sewing any kind of knit is I test my differential feed. And my suggestion for that is, when you cut out your project, make sure you've got enough left that you can cut 2 at least 10-inch squares, because you want to test your differential feed crosswise, which on most knits is the stretchier direction. But you also want to test it lengthwise, because you may need to use 2 different differential feeds. On the top I'm wearing, this is my Triangulate the T. This is a cotton with some lycra in it. When I was doing the side seams going vertically on this knit fabric, I had my differential feed probably on about maybe 1.1 or 1.2, because there is some mechanical stretch or a little bit of stretch to it lengthwise. But crosswise, there's much more stretch on it. So I cranked my differential feed up to 1.5. I know it wasn't up to 2 on this. But you want to test it in both directions. But differential feed is really only half of the equation for getting a good result on knits. The other one is operator technique and how you handle your fabric. You have to be very conscious of what your hands are doing with wovens as well as knits, but even more so with knits, because if you're pulling on the fabric trying to control it either in front of the presser foot or behind it, like you're pulling it through from behind the presser foot, even if your differential feed is up to 2, guess what? You're going to stretch it. The fabric is just going to stretch. That's just the way it is when you're pulling on it. So Um, you have to be conscious of, I like to say to people, light fingers and hands, but I like to keep my left hand kind of flat on the fabric as I'm guiding it along. That way I don't have a tendency to stretch it. And I just use my right hand when it's going through. I might have it under the fabric, my thumb might be over it, and just to kind of give it some guidance as it's going through. And also, if you've got a very unstable knit, if you don't give that support with your right hand under the fabric and you're leaving it hanging down straight off of your sewing surface, that can cause stretching too. So you want to make sure that you've got some support under that fabric as you're working with it, and that will also help prevent stretching. But I'm very big also for hems, shoulder seams, using stay tapes. No matter what I'm doing on a shoulder seam, even on woven fabrics, I use a woven stay tape in the seam when I stitch it, because even on woven fabrics, your shoulder seam probably is not exactly on the straight of grain. It's not on a true bias either, most likely, but it's on somewhat of a bias, unstable grain line. So I like woven stay tapes there. In the hems of my projects, if I'm doing a tunic or a dress that's a knit, a lot of times I'll use SSI knit stay tape, and that's available on my website. Also, what else can I tell you about that? Another thing, when I was doing some pin tucks on a rayon knit, which was a bear, I used sticky wash away stabilizer in that. And after I did the pin tucks on it, the stabilizer kept it perfectly stable. It was the greatest thing. I didn't have to fuss around with differential feed. I left that on one. It was super, super stable. So and I think I have an older tip clip on that. If not, that would be a good one to redo, because that's a fantastic tip. But in the hems of things for knits, a lot of times for lighter weight ones, to give them just a tiny, tiny bit of body and weight, I'll use the SSI knit stay tape, because it works super well and it gives a beautiful finish to those. But the name of the game with knit fabrics and differential feed on your serger is testing. Test it until you get the right dimensions. You want that 10-inch edge of your fabric, either crosswise or lengthwise, to still be 10 inches when you finish. The other thing that I say in my Serger Essentials class is that when you have your differential feed, say on 1.5, and your front feed dogs are working 50% faster than the back ones, if you're still getting some stretching and you crank it up to 2, which makes the front feed dogs work twice as fast, if then your edge shrinks a little bit, to say 9 3/4, something like that, that's still the right setting, because you can put a press cloth over your knit, use an up and down or a lift and press motion with your iron and some steam that will smooth it right out, bring it back to that 10-inch dimension. So I hope that helps. But you do have to test it in both directions, lengthwise and crosswise, and if you're doing any diagonal seams on your knit as well, test it going that way too, because you don't want any bad surprises on your project. And that would be a great thing if you took your fabric, took the scrap of it, put it in a page protector, and wrote that crosswise differential feed equals whatever, 2.0. Lengthwise, I had it 1.5, and those are just random numbers that I'm saying. But I hope that's helpful. But if you need more help with that, just shoot me an email. And if you send me some pictures also, that would be good. Also, the other tip for knits is sometimes lightening up your presser foot pressure so that it doesn't squeeze the fabric so much and tend to make it stretch a little bit. If you lighten it up just like one notch or so, that might help with that. But remember, operator technique, how you handle the fabric and your differential feed settings work side by side. Each one is equally important to the other. So, okay. So let's keep them from stretching. Marthan says you have an ovation serger and would like to sew a lace skirt. On your, well, for your lace skirt, I would probably, for the seams, use a 3-thread narrow stitch. I think that would be your best bet. And I don't have any lace right here, but I think a 3-thread narrow. That way, if you know, obviously you can see through lace. And actually, I did do a tunic a couple of years ago that was a navy blue stretch lace, and I did use a 3-thread narrow stitch, and it looked perfectly fine. I think that would be good. Depending on if it has like a decorative edge or anything like those scallops that you see sometimes, what I have done on that is if the edge of the lace is scalloped, I will trim away that scallop part of it before I cut out my pieces. And then I'll zigzag that on, say, like on the edge of the sleeve or on the hem of whatever I'm doing too. And the zigzag totally disappears if you use a matching thread. And then you get that beautiful decorative edge on that, but definitely a 3-thread narrow. If there's stretch in it, again, what I just mentioned about checking your differential feed settings and stitch length, depending on some laces, if they're like a cotton lace or something like that, some of them can be a little bit heavier, but I'd say anywhere between 2.5 to 3 for stitch length would be good for that. But definitely I would use a 3-thread narrow. I think that would work the best and give the nicest look from the outside. Lee says she's making a cute thread fusion pouch, but download seems to cut off after page 6. Huh. Well, thank you for telling me, Lee. I am going to check that out. I'm not sure. And I haven't looked at that download for a while, so I'm not sure. But basically, after you've done your thread fusion, put in, I hope you still have the instructions for doing the zipper, all of that. Basically, you're just constructing the rest of it, and you can add in that loop when you're doing that top seam. If you want the loop, it doesn't matter if you don't want it. It's fine. But I'm going to check that out and find out if there's something wrong with that download. In fact, let me get a pen because I want to make a note so I don't forget. Hang on, I'll be right back. I hate it when I find out that something is amiss, but thank you for telling me. Okay. These are all great questions. Wait a minute. Let me make a note. Thread Fusion Pouch download. And you said it cuts out after page 6. Okay. I've got a note, so I will check that out afterwards, and I'll find out what the problem is. But if you need any help with that, Lee, let me know, and I'll certainly do that. Okay, Pamela, good. I'm glad you know the bypass brackets, and that's a great tip. If you find, going back to that just for a second, if you find that you think your machine is straining a little bit with multiple threads going all the way through air threading tubes on any brand of serger, check out whether you have those bypass brackets or not, and use those, because even though my machine stitched fine with it, I just felt like there was a little bit of drag, and that's just from the thickness of those. One other thing while I'm thinking of it is I always do my little disclaimer at the beginning, but I'll do it right now. I am a Bernina ambassador, but I don't work for Bernina. However, if you are thinking about buying a new machine, whether it is a Bernina or a Burnett sewing machine, Serger, or their software, for any purchase for $1,000 and up, you're eligible for an ambassador coupon. Now, this is not retroactive earlier than today, but going forward from that or within 30 days of this, just shoot me an email, tell me when you made your purchase or when you're planning to make your purchase, and give me your mailing address, and I'll be happy to send out the $100 rebate. This is a thank you from Bernina Corporate. It's a $100 check. It is not a gift certificate for more merchandise. It's a $100 check. So just to get that out of the way, I always like to have that in front of me so I don't forget that. Okay, so let's get back. Joyce says, do I have a video on the best way to end cover stitching and cutting at the end of my seam? Yes, I do. If you go back to my Serger tip clips, I have a tip clip on stitching, cover stitching in the round. And that will give you some information. I also have one for my over the hump technique. And I think that one is, yes, it is stitching in the round as well. And that's not that far back. And I think it's on like a pinky rosy color fabric. But you can go back into my YouTube videos and find that. And I think I called it over the hump, meaning when you're stitching over that side seam, say like down here when you're hemming across it and you get those crooked, icky little stitches, how to fix that. But also it shows how to use the locking fork to pull the threads, the needle threads forward, lock the stitches, and you won't lose even one of them as you're working along. So, and if you need some help with it, definitely email me. But I do have one. Let me just see if I can find it. I have my iPad right here, and I'll tell you how far back it is. It's always good when you have all your devices here. Hang on a minute. It's on my YouTube channel. Oh, the first one that popped up in mine is handling fabric. Oh, okay. It says perfect cover stitching over seams. That's what it's called. And that was from 8 months ago. Okay, so you'll see two different fabrics. Let me just show you what the thumbnail on it looks like. It's kind of hard to see. It's that type of stitching over seams. And that will give you the stitching in the round. But again, if you have a problem with that, let me know, and I will be glad to help you out with that. But there are some tricks to it. And I'm very big on using a clear foot when I do cover stitching in the round, just so that I can make sure everything is lined up as I'm heading down to the finish line with the finishing stitches meeting exactly with the beginning stitches. So you want a really nice finish on that. Best way to end cover stitching and pull to cut at the end of the seam. Flat lock on exercise pants, 2 or 3 threads, wrong sides together or right. Any special settings? Okay, and that's with the L890. Okay, now let me just start by saying, The flat locking that you do on your home machines, on our domestic machines, the 890, the Ovations, Triumph, Viking, Pfaff, whatever, is a completely different animal than the flat lock that is in ready to wear. I believe the flat lock in ready to wear manufactured clothing is a 6-thread stitch. But on exercise wear, I think I would opt for a 3-thread flat lock just to have one more thread in there for stability and for strength. I would do that. I would have my stitch length, again, you'd have to test it on your fabric, but I think I would use maybe a 2.5 stitch length. You could even go down to 2.0 on that just for a little added strength on that. But again, I would test it, and on your scrap fabric, really pull on the seam to make sure it's going to hold, because exercise wear obviously is a very snug fit, and it gets a lot of stress and strain if you're working out or stretching or whatever you're doing for exercise or running. But I think I would opt for a 3-thread on that. And you'll test your differential feed the same way I was talking about earlier on the question using stretch or knit fabrics. Let me see. Wrong sides together or right. I think I would do probably a regular flat lock, and that you would stitch where the loop side shows on the outside of the fabric. I would do the fabric or stitch it wrong sides together. Now, another alternative to that gives a really nice look, and a lot of people use this, is they might serge the seam with a 4-thread overlock, but then they go over the that seam with the fabric wrong side up with a triple cover stitch, and then that covers the chain looper thread shows on the outside, and that is a very nice mimic of what ready to wear looks like. So that is another alternative also. You could try, and I couldn't guarantee how strong it would be, but it would be kind of interesting to test it. You could try lapping the edges together. You might want to run a stitch down with your sewing machine and then do a triple cover stitch over those, cover that raw edge on the outside, and see how that works. But again, test it to make sure that the stitches don't pop or anything, because again, on exercise wear, you want maximum stretch to be maintained on your leggings or tops or whatever you're working on. So that would be another alternate suggestion on that. What else do we have? Flat lock on exercise pants, 2 or 3. Yeah, okay, that's good. And that's a Bernina 890. That's stitch number 11 on the machine. And as I said, if you want the loop side to show of the flat locking, you're going to stitch with your fabric wrong sides together. If you want the ladders to show, you're going to stitch right sides together on the fabric. So, and either one is equally as strong. The only thing I would say about the ladders on exercise wear is you might be a little more prone if they ever got caught on anything and the stitching broke on it. That's why I think I would do a regular flat lock wrong sides together. I think the loops might hold just a little bit better, but that's up to you. You can test it out. Oh, Celeste, you asked a question. Let me go. Oh, performance spandex lycra knits for leggings. You just saw a thread called Serger, stretchy thread. I think the Serger, I think I have tried that in the Serger, And I don't think my stitching came out great with it. But I never say never to anything. I would say try it out and see if your stitching looks good and it is nice and strong and you're not getting any skip stitches. Definitely try it. And maybe, I don't know if I've tried it on the 890 now that you mentioned that, because it's been around for a few years. But I would definitely say try it out. Again, if it works, fantastic, and let me know. But if it doesn't, then just switch over to a regular thread, either your Serger cone thread or your all-purpose thread, one or the other. But the Serger is really nice to use because it does have some built-in stretch to it, and it's a good quality thread as well. I think it was really designed more for sewing machines, though. But again, I don't think I think the last time I tested it might have been on the Triumph, and I didn't get super great results on it. But that may be a different story on the 890 or other machines as well. But if for anyone who's not familiar with that, the Serger is a thread that just has a little bit of built-in stretch to it to make it flexible, which is really, really nice for knits. But definitely test it. That's what I'll say on that. So, what else? We sure wasn't missing as present, getting ready to seam it together and turn it. Oh, okay. All right, Lee. So you're going back. We're going back to the question on the thread fusion pouch. Okay. So I don't think you missed anything. If you're at that point, I don't think you missed anything critical on those instructions. But I do have my note to check it out to find out. Now, while we're talking about different things, I had done a test sample for a project with gathering, and a lot of times people think the only stitch that you can gather with, this is just kind of off track unless we have some more questions coming in. Let me just scroll. So far I don't see anything after Celeste, but I was doing some testing for something and gathering with a cover stitch. Can you gather with a cover stitch? Absolutely. Can you gather with a chain stitch? Definitely you can. And it's the exact same well, not exact same settings, but I did this, and I'm going to switch my camera over so you can see it up close. I think I have just, okay, this is just my information that my Serger Savvy obviously is the second Tuesday of the month at noon Eastern time. My website is gailpatrice.com. My company is Gail Patrice Design, and the YouTube. And also, the thing I didn't put on there was my email address, which is gail@gailpatrice.com. So if you have questions or anything else, you can do that, ask me that. But let me just move that aside and show you. This is a batik fabric, and I'm going to bring that camera in closer so you can see. And I think, let me get the light on. I think that'll help also. There, that's a little brighter. This I used a wide cover stitch on. And an interesting thing about this, I had my differential feed up to 2, and my stitch length was on 4.5. Now for this one, I did not change my tensions on my needles at all. I left it on the default settings. I left all of them on. The chain looper and both needle tensions were all on the default setting. And you can see I got really nice gathers on this. With the wide cover stitch, it almost mimics when you do 2 lines of stitching on your sewing machine and you are pulling those threads. But of course you don't have to do that, so you don't run the risk of breaking the threads either on that. But I wanted to show you that as well. And also, let me come back to me for a second. I know on the baby lock sergers in overlock mode, you have the stitch selector ABCD, and when you're gathering in that, you can't make any adjustments on tension because it has auto set tensions. But if you try doing some gathering in cover stitch mode, wide cover stitch, triple cover stitch will give you fantastic gathering on either of those machines or other machines as well. If you have a dedicated cover stitch machine, that's a different brand too. Fantastic differential feed on 2, stitch length on the longest. Probably most machines, the longest is 4. On the L890, it's 4.5 for overlock as well as cover chain stitch mode. So crank it up to that. But I left all of the tension settings on the default setting. So on your other machines, other brands of machines, that you would have to test. I can't guarantee that the default settings would be perfect, but you can always crank up the tensions in cover stitch mode. Pamela said that looks great, something to try. Yeah, gathering. The other thing that I wanted to mention, just to go back here again, is that with cover stitching, when you get those 2 lines, another thing about that I think is worth noting is that it keeps the gathering a little bit flatter, so you don't have quite as much bulk when you're putting this into another seam. Like if I was putting this into something else, say another flat fabric on that, it holds it flat and it gives it almost like a little, I don't know if you can really tell, but the gathers are almost like those little teeny pleats that stay very flat, which is nice. And by cutting down the bulk in the seam, that's kind of a good thing as well. So just to mention that. And then I was going to show you also, let me see how much time, we still have about 14 minutes, I guess. Also, I'm working on a Stockbridge skirt, and I know this is not fabulous fabric to show you on camera. However, it's the one that I'm using for this skirt, and this is a stretchy knit. Let me just show you up in front of me first. Here's the right side. It's quite stretchy crosswise. There's a little bit of give to it lengthwise, and that's what I want to talk about. And you can see this is the wrong side, and you can automatically tell that I stitched this wrong sides together. And what I wanted to show you on this, oh, hi Valerie from Indiana. Thanks for joining us. What I wanted to show you on this was that for the seaming, I decided to do it with a lettuce edge down the seam. And I did this a few years ago. I made a knit skirt for the young lady who does my video editing. And that one also did not have a ton of stretch lengthwise, but it had just enough. And that's the same case with this. And on ready to wear, this is a trend I have been seeing for a number of years, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. So I thought it would be fun to show it to you because it's super easy to do. Let me switch my camera. Okay, so I stitched this is just a pretend piece, but it is the same fabric. I stitched the seam wrong sides together on my sewing machine with just a straight stitch down, and you just stitch it at the designated seam allowance. And then I went to my serger, and on that seam allowance that was showing on the right side, and I have a little scrap of fabric to show you this. And again, it wait a minute, I did it on a different fabric that shows up better on camera. And oh, there it is. Okay, let me just show you this. And this doesn't have quite as obvious a right and wrong side, but we're going to pretend that this is wrong sides together. I just did a regular stitch. Oh, it does have a distinct wrong side here. I just did a straight stitch on my sewing machine, and I used a 3.0 stitch length. I used a stretch needle on this because interestingly, when I went to stitch it with a universal needle, the stitching didn't look good. So I put in a stretch needle, just did that. Now, on this, I would trim off some of the seam allowance, but I went to my, I didn't bother doing it by hand when I went on to this fabric to make this sample. What I did was I stitched it on the designated seam allowance, set up my serger for a 3-thread rolled hem. And on this one, I used a 12-weight spaghetti thread by Wonderfill. I'm not 100% sure whether that's what I'm going to use for the actual skirt itself, because it's a little bit stiff on this double layer of the knit fabric. So I might end up doing it, but I'm going to test a lighter weight thread as well. But I just went down with a rolled hem. I lowered my differential feed to the lowest setting, which on my machine is 0.7, so it slows down those front feed dogs. And I just stitched down, and when I did that, the fabric just had a little bit of a wave to it along the edge, which was fine. I don't like to pull the fabric for the lettuce edge as I'm stitching. If you've taken my Serger Essentials class, I think when you pull the fabric and try to stretch it manually as you're stitching, I think it invites the stitch to fall off the edge of the fabric more easily, and there's no good way to fix that other than starting all over again. But what I did was I set my knife to trim the seam allowance down to probably about a 1/4 inch, and the needle thread really kind of disappears in here, but you can just see it right along where my fingernail is, right here. And then I did the rolled hem, and then I did my little pinch and pull method that I like to do after the rolled hem is done. I'll take like 1.5 inches at a time of just the edge and give it a good pull. And this fabric does not have a lot of stretch vertically, but there's just enough to get that little bit of a ruffly edge or a lettuce edge in there. And that's kind of a fun, pretty way to do a seam. If you're looking just for something that's relatively easy to do, to jazz up, whether you're doing a tunic or a skirt, or I've seen it, I'm trying to think of what I've seen. I've seen it on skirts, I've seen it on tops. I don't know that I've seen it on any pants at all, other than a lettuce edge like along the hem edge or something like that. But I don't think I've seen any vertical seams on pants. But the one thing I would say is the Stockbridge skirt, which has a gored hem, is it's got 8 seams to it. The only seams that I do not do this on, and I just stitch them right sides together the traditional way, is on the side seams on my hips, because I don't need any extra ruffles on my hips. I just do those, and the skirt itself has a center front seam, center back seam, and side front and back seams as well. Those 3 on the front and the back are the ones that I do the lettuce edging on. But that's just kind of a fun technique to do. It's not hard. And I've done it with embroidery weight thread in the looper, the upper looper. That's where your decorative thread would be. With a rolled hem, you know yourself, you've got your right needle in, you've pulled back that stitch finger to skinny down the stitch left to right. Stitch length depends on the fabric itself. You'll test it to figure that out. This one, I had a very short stitch length on. It was on 1.2 because I wanted to really crowd the threads, because that helps keep the edge roughly as well. But again, I'm not 100% sold on the 12-weight thread here. I've got to play with it a little bit and decide if that's what I want, or if I want to go with a lighter weight thread. But I did actually have that thread in. If you want to see this on this fabric, I can just switch over my camera. I have to bring my thread. I had it in the chain looper. So let me go to that. I'll let you look at this on camera while I get that set up. And are there any questions? Hi, Bobby from Wisconsin. Nice to have you in here. Thanks for joining us. I've just got a few minutes left. So let me switch this over to this camera. You can see this. And if you've got a fabric that has a lot of give in both the vertical, the lengthwise and crosswise direction, you may even get a little more ruffling than this. But honestly, this is plenty to give it that effect. And it really highlights the seams too. If you've got a project that has interesting seams on it, that's a nice way to highlight them so that they don't get lost in the stitching itself. This is the same 12-weight spaghetti thread that I have. I'm putting it back in my upper looper. I moved it for that question on the bypass bracket. So hang on with just a second. And I'll show you my settings. Get a fresh end on this thread. And I have a question for all of you also. If you wanted a little to-go kit, say, or even just one for your sewing room for your serger, what would you like to see included in it? Like, say, maybe a brush for cleaning out the lint and little fibers in your machine, or would you like the locking fork included in that, or what would you like? And if you did that, one thing that I've always felt was handy would be to have a to-go, what I call a to-go bag. It's kind of like a duplicate of your basic sewing supplies or serging supplies that would be helpful to have. But I would love to hear from you on that. And, oh, I see what my problem is. I've got thread. Hang on a minute. I couldn't get the thread to go through the air threading tubes, and I just noticed that there is already some thread that I forgot to pull out from last night. Hang on a minute. Okay. Now we've cleared the deck, so this should be okay. Yep, there we go. Okay, my fault. As I always say, sometimes it's operator technique. That's the thing. That's the error of my ways. And sometimes when I'm rushing to do stuff, which is most of the time, sometimes I have those little things that I forgot. Okay, so okay, we're good. I think we're good to go. So let me switch over to me and tell you what I'm going to do. Okay, so I have, you can see, for anyone who's interested in my camera setup, here's a good shot of it. This camera is the one that you see on the screen. So let's go to that one. Now, I am set up, let me lighten this up a little bit. I'm set up for a 3-thread rolled hem. That's on stitch number 8 on my machine. Now, you'll notice that the default setting that the L890 has for the lower looper is 5.5. I like a higher setting on my lower looper. So I'm going to crank that up to 7. Let me just tick that down a little bit. I'm going to leave my right needle and upper looper on the default setting. That's fine. Now, I'm going to shut off the light on my foot so that it doesn't glare. All right. And come back here. Now, my stitch length on that is 1.2. That's what you see over here. I have my differential feed on 1 right now. Let's drop that down to the lowest setting, which is 0.7 on my machine. Okay, so there it is on my screen. And you can see when it turns yellow on the screen, whether it's tension or differential feed or whatever setting I've changed. When it is in yellow, that automatically tells me I am no longer in the default settings, that I have changed something. I think on this fabric, this is not the one I'm going to show you, and I know it's already 1 o'clock my time, but I'll be done in just a second. I'm going to bring my stitch length up to 1.3, I think, because this is not quite as heavy. Let's bring it up to 1.3, and again, now you see that difference there. So let's go to the other camera on the foot that I've moved around. So let me move that back. I wanted to be able to show you. I think that's okay. All right. I have my stitch width or cutting width dial on 6. This is my seam guide that I'm going to use, and I'm going to have it adjusted so it just trims off a little bit of the seam allowance on this, okay? I'm going to get this in under. Let me just chain off and make sure I have my stitch the way I want it to look. And I'm going to hold on to those threads, especially because I have a 12 weight in my upper looper. Let me just chain off for a second first. That's the Bernina burp that you hear. That's perfectly normal when it starts stitching. Yeah, okay, I've got a good chain. So I'm on 1.3. I actually left my knee guard or my knee lift in. I'm going to hold that chain for just a second, get the edge right up on the seam guide so that it's holding it exactly where I want it to go. And I'm going to pull this along. And now that my stitching is on the fabric, I can let go of the chain. It'll feed it along. Okay, cut my threads. Let me cut the top one too. Forgot to put my trim bin on, but that's okay. Okay, so let's go over to the table shot. Okay, here is the fabric, and I'm going to bring my camera in a little bit closer. Bring it down. Okay, now you can see that having, and I didn't go exactly straight while I was talking. I would have gone straight if I wasn't talking and paying attention. But you can see how that 0.7 differential feed stretched that edge a little bit. But that's what we want. But now I'm going to just really give a good tug right on just the edge of the fabric. I don't want to pull the whole thing. And I'm going to pull it along right down here. And then let's take a look at this. Yeah. And you get a nice little wavy edge. Now, I might go back and re-pull some of these segments to see if I can get it to wave a little bit more. But because this fabric does not have a ton of stretch lengthwise, I don't get quite as ruffly an edge as I would going crosswise, say on an actual hem. But going down a seam, a vertical seam, I think that's kind of cute. I like it. So, but there is my machine stitching, and that is done on the designated seam allowance so that you know that is what's going to determine the fit of your garment or whatever type of project you're working on. But it's just kind of a fun thing to show you for something different. Oh, Bobby, you said pipe cleaners. Okay, all right, that's good to go. A seam ripper for sure, small scissors. And you leave a million pairs behind, I know. Some kind of marking pen or pencils, few pins and little clips. Okay, those are all great suggestions. And also, I know we're a little bit over time, but if you have ideas for things you'd like to see in a little kit, and you think of them after I sign off, which is going to be momentarily, let me know in my emails, gail@gailpatrice.com, and I'll be writing all of these things down because I'd like it to be useful and good things to have. And as I said, I keep duplicates. I have a little zipper pouch that I keep a lot of my same utensils in. I have a thread fusion that's in my to-go bag. I have, as you said, scissors, ruler, all of the basic sewing supplies that I like to keep in there. But if you think of specific things that you'd like to see in there, let me know. Rivka said, I need a good tutorial on how to thread the cover stitch on your Baby Lock Evolution. I used to have an Evolution, Rivka, but I no longer have it. Probably if you go on babylock.com, that will give you an idea. But if you scroll back in my tip clips on the Triumph, I do have a tip clip on threading the Triumph in overlock mode and cover stitch mode. Now, it's not exactly the same as the Evolution, but it's pretty darn close as far as the threading routes and all the different things that you need to do. You can scroll back on that, and that might help you. But also, if you don't have your owner's manual for the Evolution, you can go to babylock.com and download that. And that will have diagrams also. But if you go to their website, you may be able to see a tutorial on that, and that will help you. But if you check out, it's back a few years, but my Triumph one for threading, I show overlock first, and then I went into cover chain stitch mode. And pretty much it's kind of the same process on your Evolution. The Evolution is like a mini version of the Triumph and the Ovation. They just decided to put in more space to the right of the needle for the bigger machines. Oh, hi from Maine, Diane. Nice to see you. Oh, Rivka, you said the diagram's unclear. Okay, I understand. And sometimes those line diagrams are not the easiest to follow on different brands. I'm trying to think. Well, try the Triumph one because that's a video of me showing it. And you can pause that as I go along. But if you need some help with that, shoot me an email and I will try to be as much help as possible. As I said, I used to have an Evolution, and then when the Ovation came out, I traded up to that. So I no longer have it to show you on the actual machine. But also, if you bought that from a local dealer, they should be able to show you also. You could call them first and set up an appointment and say, I need somebody to sit with me and show me how to thread up for a cover stitch or a chain stitch. And it's always better on most dealers to call ahead and make an appointment, because if you happen to go in when everybody's all tied up with customers, they're not going to be able to show you. But if you make an appointment ahead of time where they have somebody waiting to help you, that would be great. But oh, Diane, you're saying you're enjoying it outside while you watch. Yeah, we have nice weather in Connecticut too, and I think tomorrow is actually supposed to be in the 90s here. So I said to my sister-in-law, she's getting out just in the nick of time, and it was in about 100 degrees in Florida where she lives yesterday, so a little bit hotter. But considering it's only mid-June, it's pretty warm in Connecticut for that. But anyway, if anyone thinks of anything else for those kits, shoot me an email. If you have any other questions, about anything. And Rivka, if you still need help, I will just get in touch with me and I will be very happy to help you. And you can even leave a comment below the Triumph tip clip, and those go directly into my email. So I will see it and I will help you. So, anyway, thank you all for joining me today. And this will be it's being recorded now, and if you go to my YouTube channel or some of your friends weren't able to catch this live, tell them it's right on my YouTube channel, recorded, and it'll be there. Pamela, thanks. You have a good week too, and I thank you all for joining me. So enjoy the nice weather, and I hope it's good where you are too, and stay safe out there. Happy sewing and serging. Take care, everyone.